Hey there, welcome to episode 140 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, a Nevada nonprofit 501c3 public charity since June of 2022, in fact. The title and topic of today's episode, Do or Do Not. If you're a Star Wars fan, you may have heard that one, or that's a part of it. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, or if you are not familiar with the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, here's a quick rundown. As I said, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We did, production by Street. We did form in June of 2022 a reboot of the old Code for Vegas, which was part of Code for America. When we rebooted as the Code for Vegas Foundation, an independent corporation, and then later a 501c3 public charity, rather than rejoining Code for America. Then, because Code for Vegas was too somewhat off-putting, perhaps, I guess, too confusing, it would send the wrong message that we were only about code. Nothing's farther from the truth, or further even. So we renamed Innovate for Vegas because innovation can take many forms and almost anyone can do it. So Innovate for Vegas Foundation, the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program is a podcast, an audio program with episodes about various topics. We're about 140 episodes in by the end of this one. There was an episode 0, but that was an introductory episode. So we're 140 episode. We have 140 actual episodes, and episode 140 will be finished shortly. Actually, I'm not sure how long this one will be. I write them out ahead of time, so I can usually judge. But this one, we'll find out. It could be 20, 30 minutes. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, which hopefully may be YouTube, maybe Apple Podcasts, maybe Amazon Podcasts, maybe Spotify, maybe you have an RSS feed reader, podcatcher. Who knows where you're finding us, but hopefully wherever you have found us, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary with two actual sentences, but one's long, one's short. And the 2 normal links for our audio programs. We used to have 4, but keeping it to 2. And you can always find the other 2 from the first 2. Does that make sense? Very good. So let's get started so we can get finished. Summary: Civic volunteerism is a tough sell, to be sure, but what about general involvement in the world of innovation in, near, or beyond the greater Vegas locality? Where are we headed? The links, as always, the Innovate for Vegas activity homepage, our original innovateforvegas.org. That's Innovate, F-O-R, Vegas, no spaces, no other punctuation, Innovate for Vegas, .org. That is our GitHub hosted one-pager. It's a quick rundown of what we're doing. Over time, as we have actual contributors to actual initiatives and component projects, we'll be able to focus more on the who and the what, and here's version 0, here's version 1, and so on and so on. So that is hard to come by here in Vegas. And the Innovate for Vegas Foundation website, Innovate for Vegas, as before, _foundation. I mentioned that we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We are a 501c3 public charity. That's the business side. That's not as interesting, perhaps. It is for some. So a completely separate website that would focus on the business side, who's on our board of directors. Hint, that could be you. We do have vacancies on our board to fill. Financials, bylaws, things like this. Those will be destined for, if not already, on the innovateforvegas.foundation website. So 2 sides of the same coin, I like to say. Now let's get on with it so we can finish up. By the way, I forgot to mention this. Top of the show, I normally say we're recording now. We're recording very late today. A bunch of stuff earlier today kept me from getting this episode recorded and published. So the time is officially 7:58 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, October 21, 2025. We normally publish on Tuesday earlier in the day, so this one's late, but better late than never, as they say. My pay will be docked for this one. How do you dock 0? That's a question we can answer another time. So, and let me be clear, do or do not is from Yoda in, was that an Empire Strikes Back? When Luke is off to visit his humble abode to get some Jedi training, Luke says something like, I'm trying, or I try, or whatever he says. And Yoda says, try not, do or do not. There is no try. So probably the best quote of the movie. Well, maybe there are a few. But anyway, that's the origin story of today's title. So the current state of affairs, this is, we're not shutting down or anything. Just get that right out the gate. Right now, as I record this, things are not looking great on the civic volunteer front, not only for our organization, which is composed at the moment of me, myself, and I, still seeking to refill at least 2 board seats. I haven't really gone into the details of that, but it's not really worthwhile. Not overly dramatic, more disappointing, but that's the way it is. But also basically giving up in the near term, finding early adopter volunteer types to join our cohort. Hang on, this is not a death knell, as I said. So yeah, we can't spend time trying to convince people to join or participate or collaborate. So we're just going to press on, even if we is me for the moment. Here in Greater Vegas, it is difficult to determine precisely how vibrant the culture of innovation is today. My sense is there are pockets to be found. That's true most places. People do interesting things all the time. But on the whole, there's a lot of cultivating yet to do. And this is something that takes more than one person or organization, especially if the organization is one person. Something of a culture shift over time takes buy-in, maybe beginning with one person, to enlighten one or two people, and then they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. But looking around, not as our org being one of the cultivators, but in general. So just stepping back from all of it and looking, it looks like status quo remains at best for the Greater Vegas area. So there is some innovation in pockets. There are notions, there are ideas, there are events, there are gatherings. But what's happening? What is going on? It's hard to say. Not that we have to be involved in those, but it's we're checking the weather. Looking beyond Greater Vegas, well, that is tricky day to day. Will we be hearing good things from other civic tech and volunteer orgs around the country? Surely there is new innovation, which is something of redundant label, I suppose, coming from the usual places, Silicon Valley, Austin, or some parts of Texas in general, some East Coast, Philadelphia, New York. New York has actually been fairly active with some of their larger programs. There was another hackathon. Anyway, these things you kind of come across them as you might here and there. And so it's difficult to come up with like a weather map of sorts, which I think is essential. And that's something that Project ACT is sort of that's part of the idea. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So surely, there's new innovation and so on going on. And surely the current economy and concerns over this economy and whatnot and the other chaotic scenarios is something of a distraction, to be sure. But how much a distraction? Like, maybe it would be good if people would put down the YouTube videos and the TikTok, whatever, and the angry posting and the whatever's going on. News is interesting, but the future is hopefully in your hands. So first, in the do or do not, we do. First things first, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation persists. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. This is not an episode of our favorite audio program foretelling our demise. The nice thing about our business model, we do have one. We have one for the org and one for spinoffs, which I've talked about in previous episodes. We'll talk about it again. We do not need much money, and we have no external forces driving schedule or deliverables. Nobody is knocking on the door saying, where's that project? I was almost going to say, where's that code? But we're not just code. It could be anything. That could change with more participation, and more engagement with our friends and neighbors of Greater Vegas and beyond. But for now, we're fine. We're just not making a lot of noise yet. The approach remains pretty simple, but tedious, even if it is only one person actually focused on our advancement. And these are the most interesting of interesting times, so it is difficult to argue anyone is wrong in not tackling the role of early adopter lately. We can proceed slowly. I've said this for the entire time we've been in business. I personally, I can do all of the initiatives that we've designed because I designed them. So if only one person works on them, it will just take a really long time. So we'll see how that goes. Then we would be open for other people to design initiatives and architect the efforts that go into them. And maybe I would not be able to do those, but for the moment, I've kind of kept it safe. There's a lot of potential. And the thing about potential, it can remain potential for a while. We're presuming no decay. So we convert a little bit of that potential, about one person worth, to kinetic energy and move along our path. So it's not a ton, but we're moving along. Believe it or not, I'm working on code. Sometimes I work on text. Sometimes I work on imagery, other things. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. It happens to be just me right now. We still believe that reaching out beyond our locality makes the most sense, given the nature of Greater Vegas on the world stage. The most sense as in, rather than trying to be isolationist or insulationist, we are proactively reaching out to other places near and far for participation, because a good idea does not have to originate from someone residing in the Greater Vegas area. So the Vegas on the world stage, pretty well known. This assumes that role will continue as it has, which may remain to be seen. Now, Vegas being dead, that's a different story. That's gotten some headlines recently. Probably not. But generally speaking, there are a lot of visitors to this oasis in the desert through the year. A lot of trade shows, a lot of possibility when it comes to engagement, co-creation, and so on. A lot of potential. We are all in on seeing where this goes. It could be a while. It could be next week. Who knows? Now, where we do or do not. We do, but some do not. I have mentioned this before in previous episodes. It's fairly difficult to garner support for what we are trying to accomplish from some of the more well-known entities in the Greater Vegas area. I myself have reached out personally to the head of disruption or innovation or whatever he goes by here in the city of Las Vegas now. There was a transition to a new person filling that role. Basically think of it as the city CTO, the director of innovation, whatever it is. His predecessor was absolutely not supportive though. So I don't anticipate that will change, but one last try. As in replying to email as a start, that would be nice. That's what I'm looking for. I don't expect it. Vegas culture, from what I've gathered over a decade, living here. What I've gathered, that doesn't really work. No, I have gathered after over a decade. Yeah, that works. Okay. Yeah, I just said it wrong. From what I have gathered after over a decade, it's been over 12 years, is not at all like what we found in Silicon Valley back in the 90s when I first moved there, and even in the 2000s. We need to contend with that. We don't need to adopt that. We don't need to mirror that. We don't need to change into that. We just need to contend with the fact that we are not that. It doesn't seem to be just us. Just yesterday, 20 October, just us as in the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Just yesterday, the 20th of October, there's a entity, I think it's national, called the AI Tinkerers. And there was a Las Vegas AI Tinkerers event where people were supposed to show their things that they're working on, a show and tell, if you like. That's what it sounded like. Now, I will say I did sign up for this event when it first was announced 3 months ago, I don't even know, a while ago. And it was very clear that you had to fill out this form about the things you're working on and so on. So I'm like, I just want to go and see what other people are working on. I'm interested in being a spectator for once. And they made it very difficult. The sense was, well, there was nobody saying this to me, but my take home, you have to be working on some AI thing to show off. So it'll be peers, not audience. And I thought, well, all right, I'm not going I wish they would have a spectator slot. That seems like it would make sense to get the word out so that people can see what's going on, who's doing what. AI is the future of Clark County, after all. So I was a little bit, put off, trouble. I don't know. I decided to not attend. So I canceled my RSVP and went on about my business. So then I received a notification that the original date was moved. And I can't remember if the original date was October 14th or something, or sometime in October, if it was in the end of September timeframe. But it was moved to October 20th to maximize participation. And I thought, that's strange, because it looked like there were a lot of people RSVP'd, but I'm guessing what ended up happening, because only one project was listed as demonstrable, to be demonstrated, to be shown at the event, 5-minute demonstration slots, I think it was. There was still only the one when I received, I unsubscribed to the mailing list because I didn't really need it. But I visited the page for this event, and it showed that it was canceled rather than being rescheduled. So now canceled. So not enough interest. And I remember that Clark County has made AI the largest object in the middle of the tech focus for this area. It's AI, baby. As I often say, it is difficult to tell innovative people where they are going to innovate. That's why we invite people to come up with their own initiatives, not necessarily work on the ones we already have. But the reduced interest in gatherings and activities like this AI Tinkerers event, it was supposed to be just yesterday, so I'm picking on them. This is not uncommon as I would hope. It's actually, you kind of reach a maximum participation rate, and I don't know if you really make progress or if it's just something to do. So I don't know that people are taking these opportunities seriously, and I'm not speaking for everyone. These are just observations. They're anecdotal. I don't have any real data yet. We placed our monthly hackathon meetups on indeterminate hiatus years ago, about 2 years ago, when we had zero participation month over month. It's something to consider that people are just not getting it, maybe. They're not seeing that value proposition. I've always said for a place like this, you need to show progress without people so that they are missing out, and then see who comes around, who says, oh, wait a minute, turns out I am interested if I can see other people doing things. I am not suggesting that things are not happening in the greater Vegas area, quite the contrary, but I would ask whether they are material things, which is probably which they probably are sometimes, or if they are sort of feel-good things, like getting people to show up for something once a month with some free food. It seems good, but is it truly valuable? Or is it just a feel-good, like people showing up? But is it contributing to the cultivation of an innovation culture? In fact, is the entrepreneurial ecosystem becoming more vibrant as a result of these sorts of throwaway events? I don't know if anybody would be upset by that. I mean, an event where if it didn't happen, or if it did happen, is there a material change to anything? Or is it just an excuse to go out and have some free lunch? Or to meet up, to BS with people, hey, how's it going? These events are often scheduled to be all day and so on. There are ways to do that are more elevating, I think, and I've talked about that in my other program, Cafe Genius Impresarios, but we don't have to cross promote today. It's a question of cohesive coherence, I think, which I've talked about in that same different audio program. So interesting times indeed, but I'm not seeing that coherence. That's the take home. It's a difficult environment to try to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with outreach. So maybe, we'll see. So what does all this mean for our organization? We started off in 2022 attempting to be proactively engaged with potential civic volunteers. We were still new, rebooting Code for Vegas, with outreach meetups and our monthly hackathon meetup. So that was one weekend and one Saturday a month. Actually, one Saturday and one weekend per month, respectively. And even this audio program came out of that effort, and it persists. This is in keeping with that ethos we established and pursue to have an open setting for participation and to be inclusive and diverse in who is participating and what their backgrounds are and what their interests are. So not exactly the same inclusivity and diversity that everybody talks about, where personal identities are sort of immaterial. It's really what you want to accomplish and what your background is and whether you want to be a part of what we're working on and so on. So the "I'm not a coder, am I welcome here?" question answered when we changed our name, answered in part. This did not lead to attraction of, should I say the attraction of? This did not lead to the attraction of interested and interesting people. And in fact, the lack of free food, literally, is there going to be free food? That was one of the big questions. And perhaps a hierarchical management approach. We don't have that. So a lack of those two things led to people sort of fading in, checking things out, kicking the tires, as I like to say, and then disappearing. Not even saying, "Oh, I'm not interested," just not showing up again. That's common here in Vegas, but not uncommon in general. I have talked about this previously. This is profoundly expensive for people who do want to commit or who are committed, and you are listening to one of those characters, committed to pursuing the ideas behind our foundation, and it is not sustainable. So spending time onboarding people who have no intention of returning is just not worthwhile. So the Agile for Volunteers initiative was born of that. And it's much more oriented towards do first, and then let's talk. Not hey, why don't you come to a few onboarding meetups? And that's simply not sustainable. Then the same is true. A lot of our outreach sometimes met with what is possibly a feigned level of interest, but which quickly leads to what I like to call the ghost protocol. That is the preferred communication scheme in the greater Vegas area. Obviously, this is even more a waste of time, which is why we don't do it so often. In fact, we don't really do it at all, except for my outreach to the city of Las Vegas. We are named for the city of Las Vegas, Innovate for Vegas. That's the idea. Although there is one reason to be interested and possibly even supportive of changing Clark County to Vegas County. That would make our focus on Southern Nevada, in name at least, easy. No need to describe, well, we're not really focused on only Vegas, etc. But we want to look at putting together a Smarter City Hackathon for 2026, which will likely go unanswered, of course. We're not going to hear back from them. That's the usual, which represents one last attempt at that outreach. But our entire model is based on independent effort anyway, explicitly not depending on or waiting for so-called municipal partners, which was how Code for America proceeded in many cases, was to form partnerships with county and city entities, and then to develop projects that they would then have volunteers work on. So sounds good, except I think somebody was getting paid and it wasn't the volunteers. We eschew these things. We're good. As for, by the way, we can have a Smart City Hackathon without the city participation. It wouldn't be as good, but we can reach out to people and enable people, normal people, everyday people, our friends and neighbors, the locals of Vegas, the greater Vegas area, to collaborate on ideation and so on. There's a whole roadmap. I talked about it in a previous episode. A roadmap, or maybe an agenda, or a how-to of how we would proceed with this. So we don't really need, well, we'll see. We'll see what unfolds. I don't anticipate hearing from them, though. As far as collaboration with peer organizations, which is something we were driving all of last year and we got nowhere, that remains to be seen. And I suspect other organizations are having similar, not the same, but similar levels of like reduced participation. Is that possible? Levels of reduced participation? But they're having reduced participation in general. There are some organizations that do have participation. They may have a longer history with more people interested, since we've only just rebooted and it was post-pandemic, so we didn't have a track record in recent times. That's been a challenge. And again, as I said, a lot of people would show up and say, "Oh, no free food," and they would disappear. So, by the way, the hierarchical management structure, in other words, and I probably the best, although somewhat condescending description of the situation, someone said to me one day, "People in Vegas need to be told what to do." And I'm hoping that's not true, but in the case of the people who were showing up, it seemed to have been. So without someone directing, and there is no management, people do not work for me, for example. They don't work for there is no notion of hierarchy, right? So we're all supposed to be collaborating as peers and hopefully advancing the cause or causes. And I guess that's a hard sell. That's strange. Uh, we have not encountered any peer organizations who have, or which have, I guess, which have expressed interest in such collaboration. Not out loud anyway, but there is really no infrastructure to enable this. As far as I've found, the closest one would be the Code for America Zoom calls or whatever, and I didn't see those really happening. And they had a slide deck website that you could see what other cohorts or all the cohorts were working on, sort of. Very poorly maintained. All those things are gone. And then people use Slack. But if each different cohort around the country has a different Slack or Discord or whatever they're using, there's not really so much interop. That's what the internet is for. Walled gardens are tricky, and I don't know why people prefer those. But anyway, the Project ACT initiative, that's autonomous cohort tessellation. The Project ACT initiative focuses on this with something of a chicken and egg problem to tackle. Rather than waiting for a chicken or an egg to come along, we are proceeding as we can to get the ball rolling, and maybe chickens and eggs will fall from that, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, we could wait for people to work on the project. We could wait for people to be interested in the project. We could wait for other organizations to say, "Oh, what is this?" We could be doing a lot of waiting, and then nothing happens. So it's really just a question of rolling up sleeves and moving forward, even if it is only one person at the present time. So when I'm not doing audio programs, I guess. So wrapping it up for today on a personal note, you can hear my voice is going nuts. The weather is, the humidity thing is messing with me a little bit. I spent almost 15 years in the real Silicon Valley. I know that Vegas will not be the next Silicon Valley. Let us just take that off the table. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's not either of those things, but it's true. This will not be the next Silicon Valley. As I have said many, many times, focus on being a better Vegas is a far better undertaking, much more realistic, probably attainable. Turning into another place, and this goes for the Hollywood 2.0 ideas. I mentioned in another podcast now that Marky Mark has moved to Florida. That will be interesting to see what comes of it. And Warner Studios is up for sale. So actually all of that's a whole different thing. But so the future of Hollywood 2.0 in the Summerlin area may be, well, we'll see. But there's a lot of weight is focused on being something else or depending on something else. And I prefer to think that looking at where the culture is in a locality and where the people are, what they want to accomplish into the future, especially, as I've said before, beginning with 7th grade, age 12 is where entrepreneurialism is a thing that should be focused on. Innovation, same thing. It's the way education timelines work. It could be before that, but junior high school. Anyway, this does not mean innovation is not a part of being a better Vegas. Quite the opposite, in fact, and thus we will continue with however many contributors are interested in being a part of that effort. So presently 1. I have found that a lot of hype around making Vegas a startup scene and an innovation hub is focused on larger companies with established business, or presenting resource plans to potential entrepreneurs. Hey, here's how you can get funding. And maybe a few startups here and there showing up to show and tell what they're working on, or demo, I suppose. What I do not see personally is an emphasis on any kind of directing innovation thinking and action locally, where there is so much potential to not only elevate our communities to actually tackle real problems. That's what the Smarter City Hackathon will be about, but share those elevated outcomes with the many, many visitors to the area each year and other localities and so on. So this is a missed opportunity, in my opinion. I've talked about the greater Vegas area as a city as a showcase to show off innovation with so many people visiting here and so on. Those are other ventures outside of the purview of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, but parts of what we're working on could factor into some of that. And finally, in keeping with the rule of 3, this is the final point. It's simple. The only way we are going to accomplish anything in this climate, in this context, is to proceed without waiting on unanswered emails and empty gatherings. Interested and interesting people are in short supply around here, as far as we can tell. If there are more than we've come across, by all means, come on out. We will have to see what happens as we continue our efforts, which we are doing, to be continued. And that is today's episode. Late, but not never. Thank you for listening as always, and do consider reaching out. You can visit our website and get contact information if you're curious. You can. We're going to continue having office hours. Our initiative meetup is going to go on hiatus for a while because that's not really been productive at all. But our office hours, as I'm speaking right now, are on Tuesdays. But if you visit the innovateforvegas.org website or Innovate for Vegas Foundation websites, the gatherings calendar is visible. You can see when the next office hours are, whether they're on Tuesday. They're probably going to stay on Tuesdays, but we'll see. But you can always find those. No RSVP necessary. Just come on down. You can ask questions, have a chat. You want to start your own organization working on civic volunteerism, civic tech, by all means. If you're already in an organization doing these things and you want to talk about collaboration, or you want to talk about anything in the vein of civic volunteerism and community elevation and so on, by all means. We try to keep the office hours to non-technical. So yeah, we're not talking about implementing project detail. We're not going to do mechanical design drawings. We're not going to do software reviews, code reviews. So yeah, we'll keep it light. But that's what that's for. In the meantime, there will be another episode of this very audio program in 1 week's time, and probably another one the week after that. Thank you for listening as always again, and thank you for your support, which begins with listening to this program, and then we'll see where you want to take that. Thank you very much. Take care.